Grace, an 8-year-old girl, never thought a sunny afternoon would turn into a heart-racing challenge. She was playing outside with her little brother Leo when her happy world turned upside down. She found Leo trapped inside their family car, with the hot sun shining down and the temperature rising fast inside the car. Grace felt both scared and determined. Holding a small rock in her hand, she remembered her parents' words, "You're the big sister now, Grace. You need to protect Leo." As she got ready to break the car window, the job felt harder than ever. How did her fun playtime turn into a mission to save her brother? And how would her bravery turn this scary moment into a story of heroism? Stay tuned to find out. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to Piece of Fiction if you like Grace's story. The warm sun shone on the green grass as Grace chased her little brother Leo. Their laughter filled the backyard, mixing with the sounds of birds chirping and leaves rustling. Grace, at 8 years old, was a great big sister. She always watched her 5-year-old brother closely. "Wait up!" Grace called, her ponytail bouncing as she ran. "Don't go too close to the fence." Leo laughed, running around in circles. "You can't catch me, Grace." Grace smiled and slowed down a bit to let Leo feel like he was winning their game of tag. She knew he loved to be chased, but she also knew she had to keep him safe. As the oldest, that was her job, even when they were playing. Inside the house, their parents were busy. Their mom was talking on the phone, probably working on the plans for the important dinner party they were having that night. Their dad was upstairs, fixing something that had been broken for a long time. Earlier that day, when Grace helped set the table for breakfast, her mom had asked her for help. "Grace, sweetie," her mom said, kneeling to talk to her, "Dad and I have a lot to do today to get ready for our guests tonight. Do you think you can be my special helper and watch Leo while we're busy?" Grace had stood tall, feeling proud. "Of course, Mom. I can do it." "That's my girl," her mom said, giving her a quick hug. "You're such a responsible big sister. I know I can count on you." Now, as the afternoon sun got higher, Grace felt how important that trust was. She kept an eye on Leo, making sure he didn't get too close to anything dangerous. When he picked up a stick, she gently told him, "Hey, Leo, let's play with your ball instead." She pointed to the colorful ball near the porch steps. Leo's face lit up. "Yeah, can we play catch?" "Sure, buddy," Grace said, picking up the ball and tossing it gently to him. Leo caught it with both hands, concentrating hard. As they played, Grace kept talking to keep Leo interested. "What do you think Mom is making for dinner tonight?" she asked, catching the ball. Leo wrinkled his nose. "Spaghetti?" Grace laughed. "I don't think so. It's a fancy dinner party, remember? Maybe something grown up like salmon." Leo stuck out his tongue. "Yuck, fish!" They kept playing, with Grace showing Leo how to throw the ball better and praising him when he did well. She remembered how her dad had taught her to play catch when she was Leo's age, and now she was teaching her little brother. It made her feel important and responsible. After a while, Grace noticed Leo was getting tired. His throws weren't as strong, and he yawned a lot. She glanced at her watch, the one Mom had given her for her birthday. It was almost Leo's nap time. "Hey, Leo," she called softly, "why don't we take a break? We can sit on the porch, and I'll tell you a story." Leo nodded, sleepy, and walked over to her. Grace took his hand and led him to the porch swing, helping him climb up. They sat together, and Grace started telling a story about a brave knight and his dragon friend. As she spoke, Leo's eyes slowly closed and he fell asleep. Just then, their mom came outside. She looked tired, but when she saw her children on the swing, her face softened. "How are my favorite helpers doing?" she asked warmly. Grace smiled. "We're good, Mom. Leo's just a little sleepy." Mom nodded, looking grateful. "I can see that. You've done such a great job taking care of him, Grace. Thank you." Grace felt proud. "It's no problem, Mom. I like taking care of Leo." Mom smoothed Grace's hair. I know you do, sweetheart. You're growing up so fast. She looked back at the house, her face showing some worry. I hate to ask, but could you watch Leo a bit longer? There's been a problem with the dinner order, and I need to fix it. Your dad is still busy with that leaky pipe. Grace nodded quickly. Of course, Mom. I've got this. Her mom smiled, relieved. You're a lifesaver, Grace. If you need anything, just come get me, okay? Okay, Mom, Grace said, feeling even more important. As Mom went back inside, Grace stayed on the porch, listening to Leo's soft snores and the sounds of her parents working in the house. She felt grown up and proud that she could help. After a while, she saw the sun starting to set. The dinner party would start soon, and she knew her parents would be getting busier. Grace gently nudged Leo. Leo, she whispered, time to wake up. Leo slowly opened his eyes and yawned. Is it time for the party? Grace giggled. Not yet, but soon. Want to play a quiet game while we wait for Mom and Dad to finish getting ready? Grace woke up slowly, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. She turned to her younger brother, Leo, who was sitting next to her. Can we play hide and seek? He asked, his voice still a little sleepy but eager. Grace smiled and nodded. Sure, she said, helping him sit up. I'll count, and you hide. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across their backyard. It was the perfect time for a game of hide and seek. Grace stood by the old oak tree, closed her eyes, and covered her face with her hands. She started counting aloud. 18, 19, 20. Ready or not, here I come, she called out, her voice echoing through the quiet evening air. When Grace opened her eyes, she scanned the yard for any sign of Leo. She checked behind the bushes, under the porch, and even inside the big cardboard box they had turned into a fort just last week. But Leo wasn't in any of his usual hiding spots. As she kept looking, a tiny knot of worry began to grow in Grace's stomach. She told herself not to worry. Leo had probably found a really good hiding place this time. But after circling the yard for the third time, calling out for Leo without a response, the knot of worry turned into a heavy feeling of fear. Leo, Grace called, her voice shaky now. Leo, come on out. You win. Game over. There was no reply. The only sound was the distant hum of a neighbor's lawnmower and the rustling of leaves in the soft evening breeze. Grace's heart started to race. She ran to the gate at the edge of the yard, checking to make sure it was still latched. It was. She stood still for a moment, panic rising in her chest as she tried to figure out where her brother could be. Suddenly, Grace spotted something that made her freeze in place. The family car was parked in the driveway, and the windows were rolled up tight. A terrible thought flashed through her mind. Could Leo be in the car? Without a second thought, Grace sprinted toward the car. Her sneakers slapped against the pavement as she ran, her heart pounding in her ears. As she got closer, she saw what she had feared, a small figure slumped in the back seat. It was Leo. Leo! Leo! Grace screamed, her voice cracking with fear as she reached the car. She pressed her face against the window, trying to see him clearly. Leo was inside, his eyes closed, looking pale and sweaty in the stifling heat of the car. Grace yanked at the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. It was locked. Leo, wake up, please, wake up, she shouted, banging on the window. Inside the car, Leo stirred slightly, but his movements were slow and weak. Sweat was pouring down his face and his t-shirt was stuck to his skin. Grace's mind raced. She had to do something, but what? For a moment, Grace felt frozen with fear. Her first instinct was to run inside and get their parents. They would know what to do, and they could help Leo right away. But as she turned to go, a memory popped into her head. She remembered her mom talking to her a few weeks ago, kneeling down and holding her hands. Her mom had said, "You're the big sister now, Grace. If anything happens to Leo when we're busy, I'm counting on you to take care of him until we can get to you." Those words echoed in Grace's mind as she looked back at the car. Leo was still in there, and she knew she couldn't waste any time. If she ran to get help, it might take too long. She had to try to save Leo herself. But how? Grace's eyes darted around the driveway and the yard, searching for something, anything that could help her. She looked at the car again, her mind racing for ideas. Then something caught her eye. The small metal hood ornament on the front of the car. It looked like a little sword. Maybe she could use something sharp like that to break the window. Her eyes scanned the yard again, and then she saw it. The garden gnome sitting in her mom's flower bed. The gnome was holding a tiny ceramic pickaxe. Grace ran over to it, like her hands trembling. "Sorry, Mr. Gnome," she muttered as she yanked the pickaxe out of the gnome's hands. The small tool felt heavier than she expected, but it was her only chance. Grace hurried back to the car, her heart beating faster with every step. Inside, Leo was moving a little more, but he still looked weak and out of it. Grace knew she had to act fast. She remembered a safety video she had watched at school about what to do in an emergency. They had said if you ever needed to break a window, you should aim for the corners because the glass was weakest there. With a deep breath, Grace raised the pickaxe and swung it at the bottom corner of the rear window, away from where Leo was sitting. The first hit made a small crack, but the window didn't break. Grace's arms shook, but she didn't give up. She hit the window again, harder this time, and the crack grew larger. She swung the pickaxe again and again, gigging, each time chipping away at the glass. Finally, with one last strong hit, the window shattered into tiny pieces. Glass rained down inside and outside the car. Grace quickly brushed away the remaining shards, being careful not to cut herself. A rush of hot air escaped from the car, and Grace could feel how hot it had been inside. She reached through the broken window and felt around for the door lock. Her fingers found the small knob, and with a pull, she heard the satisfying click of the door unlocking. Grace threw the door open and leaned inside. "Leo!" she cried, gently shaking his shoulder. Leo's eyes fluttered open, and he looked up at his sister, dazed but awake. "Grace," he whispered weakly. Tears welled up in Grace's eyes, but she smiled. "You're okay, Leo," she said softly. "I've got you." Grace knew the danger wasn't over, but she had done it. She had saved her brother. Now she would get him inside to cool down and find her parents. But in that moment, all that mattered was that Leo was safe. Grace opened the car door and got into the back seat, her heart beating fast. Leo, can you hear me?" she said, shaking her brother gently. Leo's eyes slowly opened, and he looked confused. "Grace," he whispered in a weak, scratchy voice. "It's okay, Leo. I'm here," Grace said, trying not to cry. She could feel how hot Leo was and knew she had to get him out of the car fast. With strength she didn't know she had, Grace unbuckled Leo's seatbelt and carefully pulled him out of the car. She half carried, half dragged him to the big oak tree in their yard, laying him on the cool grass. "Leo, are you okay?" "Can you talk to me?" she asked, pushing his wet hair away from his face. Leo blinked and slowly started waking up as the fresh air hit him. I'm thirsty," he said weakly. "Okay, I'll get you some water. Stay here and don't move," Grace said, her voice shaky. She ran to the faucet outside and caught some water in her hands. Then she rushed back to Leo and helped him drink from her hands. As Leo drank, his face started to look better and his eyes became clearer. "What happened?" Leo asked, sounding a little stronger. Grace sat back, her heart finally calming down. "You got locked in the car, Leo. Don't you remember?" Leo frowned, trying to think. I was hiding for hide and seek. The car door was open, so I thought it would be a good spot, but then it got really hot and I couldn't get out." Grace felt bad. She should have checked the car earlier or made sure it was locked before they started playing. But she didn't focus on that now. What mattered was that Leo was safe. While they sat under the tree and Leo started feeling better, Grace's thoughts drifted. Should she have gone to get their parents? Had she done the right thing? What if something had gone wrong? The responsibility felt heavy on her young shoulders, but she looked at Leo, alive and getting better, and knew her quick actions had made a big difference. She had done what her parents trusted her to do: be a good big sister. Suddenly, a loud noise of glass breaking echoed through their quiet neighborhood. Inside the house, Grace's parents froze, busy with party preparations. They exchanged worried looks and hurried toward the sound. What was that? Grace's mom asked in panic. I don't know, but it came from outside, her dad said, heading for the back door. They rushed out onto the porch, scanning the yard. What they saw made their hearts race. Grace was sitting under the big oak tree, holding Leo in her arms. Both children were trembling. Grace, Leo, their mom shouted as she and their dad ran across the lawn. As they got closer, they saw the family car in the driveway. The back window was broken, and pieces of glass glittered on the ground. A broken garden gnome lay nearby. What happened? Are you two okay? Their dad asked, kneeling beside them, looking for injuries. Grace looked up, tears filling her eyes, her lips quivering. She tried to speak, but started crying instead. Leo, still cuddled in her arms, whimpered softly. It's okay, sweetie, their mom said, gently stroking Grace's hair. Take a deep breath and tell us what happened. Grace tried to calm down. I broke the car window, she whispered. Her parents looked confused. You broke the window? Her dad repeated. But why? Leo was stuck inside, Grace explained quickly. We were playing hide and seek and he hid in the car, but then he got locked in. It was so hot and I couldn't open the door. I was so scared. As Grace explained, her parents' faces changed from confusion to shock, then to relief. Their mom hugged both kids tightly. Oh, my brave girl, she whispered, tears in her eyes. Their dad stood up, running a hand through his hair as he looked around at the broken window, the smashed gnome, and the whole scene. He saw how desperate Grace must have been to save Leo. Grace, he said gently, why didn't you come get us? We could have helped. Grace's lower lip trembled again, but she looked at her dad. I was scared, she admitted. Mom always says I need to take care of Leo when you're busy. I thought if I ran to get you, it might take too long, and Leo might... She couldn't finish the sentence, tears spilling down her cheeks. Her parents exchanged a look, a mix of pride and worry. Her mom hugged her tighter. Oh, sweetheart, she said, her voice full of emotion. We are so proud of you for being brave and acting so quickly. But remember, you can always come to us if there's an emergency, okay? Grace sniffled. I know, but I wanted to be a good big sister. I wanted to protect Leo, like you asked me to. Her dad knelt down again and put a hand on her shoulder. And you did protect him, Grace. You saved your brother's life today. That's a very brave and responsible thing you did. As the truth of what happened sank in, Grace's parents' worry turned into pride. They looked at their daughter and saw not just their little girl, but someone who had faced a scary situation with courage. Let's get you both inside, their mom said, helping Grace and Leo stand up. We need to make sure you're both okay, and then we can talk more. As they walked to the house, Grace's dad stopped to look at the broken car window. He shook his head, amazed at what his daughter had done. Inside, they sat in the living room. Their mom brought glasses of water and some cookies to help calm everyone down. Leo, still a little shaken but feeling better, ate a cookie while their dad checked to make sure he was okay. Grace sat on the couch, watching her family, feeling tired and a bit overwhelmed. She couldn't believe what she had done and worried that she might be in trouble for breaking the car window. As if knowing what Grace was thinking, her mom sat down next to her and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Grace, she said softly, we want you to know how proud we are. What you did today was so brave and grown up. Grace looked up, feeling a wave of relief. You're not mad about the car? She asked. Her dad, who had just finished checking on Leo, sat beside her on the couch. No, Grace, he said with a smile. We're just so glad you're both okay. Grace's dad spoke firmly. We can replace the car window, but your brother's life is what really matters. You made the right choice, Grace. Her mom added gently, we also want you to know that you don't have to handle big emergencies like this all by yourself. When we say you're responsible for Leo, we mean for things like making sure he doesn't wander off while you're playing or helping him if he scrapes his knee. In really dangerous situations, it's important to get help from an adult. Grace nodded as she started to understand. I was just so scared, she said quietly. I kept thinking about that story on the news about the kid in the hot car. I didn't want that to happen to Leo. Her parents looked at each other with sad eyes, realizing how much Grace had been worrying. Her dad hugged her tightly. We're sorry you had to deal with that fear, but we're so proud of how you handled it. You were very brave. That evening, the family sat together in the living room, forgetting about the dinner party they had been preparing for. They talked about what had happened, with Grace explaining how she saved Leo. Her parents listened closely, feeling proud of her bravery. Leo, who was now feeling better, happily joined the conversation. Grace is my hero, he said with a big smile. She saved me like a superhero. Grace blushed but smiled, feeling proud for the first time since the incident. As the night went on, Grace's parents decided to cancel the dinner party and instead ordered pizza to celebrate Grace's bravery and Leo's safety. Over pizza, her parents shared stories about times when they had faced scary situations and had to make quick decisions. They wanted Grace to understand that being brave didn't mean not feeling scared, but acting even when you're afraid. You know, Grace, her dad said, wiping pizza sauce from his face, when I was your age, I had to help my little brother too. He fell into a creek and I had to pull him out. I was scared, but I knew I had to act fast. Really? What happened? Grace asked, her eyes wide. I pulled him out and he was okay, just cold and scared. But I remember feeling very grown up afterward, like I had passed some kind of test. That's how I feel, Grace said. Scared but also different somehow. Her mom smiled. That's because you faced something very grown up today. You handled a real emergency, and that changes how you see yourself. As the evening came to an end, Grace's parents tucked her and Leo into bed, making sure they felt safe and loved after all the excitement. In Leo's room, they heard him proudly telling his stuffed animals how his big sister saved him from the hot car monster. In Grace's room, her parents sat on her bed, looking serious but loving. Grace, her mom began, we want you to know how proud we are of you. What you did today was amazing. Her dad agreed. You showed great courage and quick thinking. You saved Leo's life, and that's something to be proud of. Grace snuggled under her covers, feeling a mix of emotions. I was so scared, she admitted quietly. I kept thinking about what you said, Mom, about me being responsible for Leo. I was afraid I'd let you down if something happened to him. Her mom's eyes filled with tears as she stroked Grace's hair. Oh, sweetie, we never meant for you to feel that kind of pressure. When we say you're responsible for Leo, we mean for everyday things, not life and death situations. That's right, her dad added. We're the adults, and it's our job to handle the really big, scary stuff. But you stepped up today in a way many adults might not have, and we're so proud of you. Grace nodded, a small smile on her face. I do feel proud, she admitted. Even though I was scared, I knew I had to help Leo. Her mom kissed her forehead. That's what bravery is, sweetie. It's not about not being scared. It's about doing what needs to be done, even when you are scared. We want you to know, her dad said, that while we're incredibly proud of how you handled today's emergency, you don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. You're still a kid, and it's okay to ask for help, especially in dangerous situations. Grace nodded again, her understanding growing. So I did the right thing by helping Leo, but next time I should try to get an adult if I can? Exactly, her mom smiled. You're growing up and becoming more responsible, but you're still our little girl. We're here to help you with the big, scary parts of life. After saying goodnight and turning off the light, Grace felt warm inside. She was proud of what she had done, but also relieved to know that she didn't have to face every challenge on her own. She had her family to support her and help her grow. As she drifted off to sleep, Grace thought about the day, the fear she had felt, the quick decision she had made, and the relief of knowing Leo was safe. She realized that being a big sister didn't mean she had to be perfect or handle everything by herself. It meant doing her best, caring for her brother, and knowing when to ask for help. The next morning, sunlight streamed through Grace's window as she woke up feeling different. She wasn't sure what had changed, but she felt older and more confident. When she looked in the mirror, she didn't just see a little girl anymore. She saw a brave big sister who had faced something scary and come out stronger. Downstairs, her family was already at the breakfast table. Leo grinned at her with admiration in his eyes, and her parents greeted her with smiles and hugs. As they ate breakfast and talked about their plans for the day, Grace felt happy. She knew that whatever came next, she was brave enough to handle it, wise enough to ask for help when needed, and lucky enough to have her family by her side. In the weeks that followed, everyone in town heard about Grace's bravery. Neighbors came by to congratulate her, and local news reporters wanted to talk to her. She even got a special award from the town's fire department for her quick thinking. At first, all the attention made Grace feel shy. She would blush and say, "I just did what anyone would do for their brother." But as time went on, Grace began to understand how important her actions were, not just for her family, but for everyone who heard her story. One sunny Saturday morning, about a month after what happened, Grace sat at the kitchen table, stirring her cereal without really paying attention. Her mom noticed Grace was deep in thought and sat beside her. "What's on your mind, sweetie?" she asked kindly. Grace looked up, her face showing she was thinking hard. "Mom, do you think I could help other kids learn about car safety so what happened to Leo doesn't happen to anyone else?" Her mom's eyes widened in surprise, but then she smiled proudly. "That's a wonderful idea, Grace. What do you have in mind?" Grace excitedly started sharing her ideas. Soon, her dad and Leo came into the kitchen, curious about the lively conversation. Before long, the whole family was talking about ways to turn Grace's experience into something good that could help others in their community. Over the next few days, Grace worked hard on her project. She made colorful posters with safety tips, wrote a simple story about car safety for younger kids, and even came up with a catchy slogan, "Check before you lock." Her parents were so proud of her. They helped her contact local schools and community centers to set up times for her to give presentations. Grace's first presentation was at Leo's kindergarten class. As she stood in front of the room full of 5-year-olds, she felt nervous. But when she saw Leo sitting on the carpet, smiling up at her with trust, she felt braver. Grace took a deep breath and started, "Hi everyone, I'm here to talk about something really important. How to stay safe around cars." As she told her story and shared what she learned, Grace noticed the kids were listening closely. They gasped at the scary parts, cheered when she talked about breaking the car window, and excitedly raised their hands to ask questions. Some even shared their own stories. By the end, Grace felt really good. She had turned something scary into something helpful to keep other kids safe. As Grace packed up her things, she overheard Leo telling his friends proudly, "That's my big sister. She's the bravest person in the whole world." Grace's heart swelled with happiness. Grace's presentations became a regular thing, not just at schools, but at community events and even a safety conference. Her parents watched her with pride as she grew more confident and better with each presentation. One night, as she practiced her speech at home, her dad shook his head in amazement. "You know, Em," he said, "I think you found your calling. You're really good at talking to people and sharing important information." Grace smiled at the compliment, but then looked a little unsure. "Thanks, Dad," she said softly. "But do you think people will still care about what I have to say once they forget what happened with Leo? I mean, I'm just a kid." Her mom sat beside her and hugged her close. "Sweetie," she said gently, "what makes your message special isn't just what happened that day. It's your care for others, how well you explain things, and your passion for keeping people safe. Those things will never change." Grace nodded, feeling comforted by her mom's words. Snuggling into her mom's hug, she felt a new sense of purpose. She might be young, but she knew she could make a difference, and she wanted to do her best to help. As summer turned to fall, Grace's safety campaign grew even bigger. She was invited to speak at the town's fall festival, her biggest audience yet. Standing on the stage in the town square, looking out at the crowd of neighbors, classmates, teachers, and even strangers, Grace felt a surge of confidence. "Good afternoon, everyone," she began, her voice clear. "I'm here to talk about something that changed my life, and I hope it can change yours too." As Grace shared her story and her safety tips, she saw something amazing happening. Parents pulled their kids closer, nodding at her words. Teenagers who looked bored at first were now listening carefully, some even taking notes. And there, in the front row, was Leo, his eyes shining with pride as he watched his big sister. After her speech, as Grace made her way through the crowd, a woman stopped her. The woman's eyes were full of tears as she took Grace's hand. "Thank you," the woman said, her voice full of emotion. "Your story made me realize how easily something like that could happen. I have a little one at home, and I'll never look at my car the same way again. You may have saved a life today." Grace felt a lump in her throat as the woman's words hit her. She had hoped to help, but hearing such kind and heartfelt feedback made it all feel so real. As the family walked home from the festival that evening, Grace's dad gave her a gentle nudge. "So how does it feel to be the hometown hero and an amazing public speaker?" Grace laughed and shook her head. "Dad, stop it. I'm not a hero. I'm just trying to help." Her mom smiled softly. "You know, Grace, sometimes the biggest heroes are the ones who don't see themselves that way. They just keep showing up, trying to make things better." As they reached their front porch, Grace paused, looking back at the twinkling festival lights in the distance. She thought about all the people she had spoken to and the lives she might have touched. Grace had taken on a big job, and she was starting to feel ready for it. "I think I want to keep doing this," she said quietly. "Not just about car safety, but maybe other kinds of safety too. Do you think I can keep doing this, even when I grow up?" Her parents looked at each other, smiling with pride. "Sweetheart," her dad said, putting his arm around her, "I think you've already started. This isn't just something you're doing because of what happened. You've found something you really care about, and will support you all the way." As fall turned into winter, more people knew about Grace. She was asked to speak at schools and events in other towns. Even a news station called her to talk about her safety ideas. At first, Grace was excited and worked hard, thinking that every talk and interview could stop another kid from getting hurt. But as she got busier, it became harder for her. One cold December afternoon, Grace sat at her desk, staring at a blank paper. She was supposed to write a new talk for a safety fair, but she couldn't think of anything. Her head hurt and she felt tired. A soft knock at her door made her jump. "Come in," she called, trying to sound cheerful. Her mom came in with a mug of hot chocolate. Seeing Grace's tired face, she sighed and put the mug on the desk. "Sweetie," her mom said gently, "I think we need to talk about balance." "Balance? What do you mean?" Grace asked, confused. Her mom sat down beside her. "I mean finding a way to do all the important things you're doing without getting too tired, Vide. You've been working nonstop, and it's starting to wear you out." Grace felt a bit defensive. "But Mom, this is really important. I can't stop. What if someone gets hurt because I didn't do a talk or an interview?" Her mom reached out and brushed some hair from Grace's face. "Your work is very important," she said, "but you're important too. If you don't take care of yourself, you can't help others." Grace felt a wave of emotion. Tears filled her eyes as she realized just how tired she really was. "I don't know how to stop," she whispered. "It feels like everyone is counting on me." Her mom hugged her tightly. "I know, sweetie, but remember, you're still a kid. It's okay to take breaks, to have fun, to just be Grace, not Grace the safety expert. In fact, it's not just okay, it's needed." Over the next few weeks, Grace's family helped her find balance. They made sure she only accepted a few talks each month and gave her plenty of time for homework, playing with friends, and just being a kid. Grace was surprised that as she gave herself more rest, her love for safety work grew stronger. Her talks became more fun and creative because she had new energy from doing other activities. As the new year approached, Grace looked back on the amazing journey she had taken in the last 6 months. She had gone from a regular kid to a local hero and a safety leader, all because of one scary day and the choices she made. On New Year's Eve, her family gathered in the living room to watch the ball drop on TV. Her dad raised a glass of sparkling cider. "To Grace," he said, "who taught us all that bravery comes in all sizes and that one person really can make a difference." Grace blushed but felt proud as her family clinked their glasses together. As they counted to midnight, she thought not only about the year ending, but also about the exciting possibilities ahead. The next morning, Grace woke up early, feeling fresh and happy about the new year. She went downstairs in her pajamas and found her parents already up, sitting at the kitchen table with serious looks on their faces. "Good morning," she said, a bit unsure. "Is everything okay?" Her parents looked at each other before her mom spoke. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. We just have some news to share with you." Grace sat down, feeling curious. Her dad cleared his throat. "We got a call last night after you went to bed. It was from a national children's safety organization. They heard about your work and are really impressed." Grace's eyes grew wide. "Really? Wow, that's amazing." Her mom smiled proudly. "It is, and they have an idea for you." Grace blinked in surprise. "For me? What is it?" "They want to take your safety campaign all across the country," her dad explained. "They want you to talk at schools and events everywhere. They also want to turn your safety tips into books and videos to help millions of kids. It's a big chance, but it's also a big responsibility." Grace's mind raced. She thought about how many children she could help, but she also thought about her friends, school, and her life in her small town. And she remembered what she had learned about balance. I don't know what to say," she said quietly. "It sounds amazing, but also a little scary. What do you think?" Her parents looked at each other again before her mom spoke. "We think it's a wonderful opportunity, but it's also a huge decision. You don't have to decide right away. We told them we'd need time to think about it as a family." Grace nodded, grateful for the time to think. "Can I think about it for a few days?" "Of course," her dad said. "Take all the time you need. This is your choice, and we'll support you no matter what." Over the next week, Grace couldn't stop thinking about the big decision. She made lists of good and bad things, talked with her friends, and even had a long talk with Leo about how he would feel if she had to travel a lot. She felt touched when her little brother said he would miss her a lot. But she should do it because the world needs to know about my superhero sister. After 7 days of thinking, Grace called her family to the living room to share her choice. "I want to do it," she said firmly, even though she was nervous. "I want to take the campaign to the whole country." But before her parents could speak, she raised her hand. "I have some conditions." Her parents were surprised but proud. "Go on," her dad said. Grace took a deep breath. "First, I don't want to stop going to my regular school. Maybe I can do some work online when I'm traveling, but I want to stay connected to my friends and my life here." Her mom nodded. That sounds smart, Grace. What else? Second, Grace continued, I want to make sure we still have lots of family time. Maybe you can travel with me sometimes, or we can have special no work times when I'm home. Her dad smiled. Of course, family always comes first. And third, Grace said, her voice getting softer, I don't want to forget why we started this. It's not about being famous, it's about helping kids and families stay safe. Her parents were so proud. Oh, Grace, her mom said, hugging her. You'll never forget that, but we'll remind you if you need it. Grace was excited and a little nervous about what was coming next, but she knew with her family's support, she could do it. The next few months were busy as Grace, and her family prepared for the campaign to go national. There were meetings with people who made books, videos, and planned events. Grace worked with a speaking coach to practice talking to large audiences. She even helped design a mascot for her campaign, a friendly dog named Safety Sam, who would help share her message with younger kids. Through it all, Grace made sure to keep her balance. She still did her schoolwork, hung out with friends, and spent quiet evenings at home with her family. These moments helped her stay grounded, reminding her of why she started this journey in the first place. As spring came, Grace stood backstage at a big auditorium far from home. She was about to give a speech at the national launch of her safety campaign. The audience was full of teachers, parents, and reporters. Grace felt nervous, but then spotted her family, her parents smiling and Leo giving her a thumbs up. She remembered how far she had come since that scary day when she had saved her brother. When Grace stepped onto the stage, the bright lights were blinding. For a moment, she felt scared, but then she remembered her mom's advice. Just be yourself, sweetheart. Your story is powerful because it's real and comes from your heart. Taking a deep breath, Grace started, Good morning. My name is Grace. 6 months ago, I was just a regular kid in a small town. I never thought I'd be here today, but sometimes life surprises you. She shared her story about the day Leo got stuck in the car, how scared she was, and the journey that brought her to this stage. The audience was quiet, listening closely. When she finished, everyone stood up and clapped loudly. Backstage, Grace was surrounded by people wanting to talk to her. It was overwhelming, but she felt happy too. People kept saying things like, she's so brave for her age, and this could change how we teach kids about safety. Later, Grace sat quietly in the hotel lobby watching her parents talk to event organizers. Leo was asleep on a nearby couch. A woman came over and asked, Can I sit with you? Grace recognized her as a speaker from earlier, a psychologist who had talked about teaching kids to handle emergencies. You did a great job today, the woman said. How are you feeling? Grace thought about it. Tired, she said with a little laugh, but also excited and a bit scared. It feels so big now. The woman nodded. It is big, but you're big enough to handle it. Not because you're a superhero, but because you're a kind girl who wants to make a difference. Grace shared more of her feelings, and the woman listened and gave advice. By the time her parents came to get her, Grace felt more confident about the future. Over the next few months, Grace's life got busier. She went to school during the week and traveled for speeches and meetings on the weekends. It wasn't always easy. Sometimes she missed birthday parties or school events, but there were special moments too. Like when she got a letter from a girl who used her safety tips to help a friend, or when she saw kindergartners practicing what to do in an emergency. As summer came closer, Grace faced another challenge. She was going to be on a big national morning TV show to talk about her new children's book series. It would be live, and millions of people would be watching. The night before, Grace couldn't sleep. She kept worrying about messing up. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. She quietly knocked on her parents' door. Her dad opened it, looking concerned. What's wrong, Grace? She ended up curled between her parents, crying and telling them her fears. Her mom stroked her hair and her dad held her hand. "Oh, sweetie," her mom said, "it's okay to be scared. This is a big deal." Her dad nodded. "But you've got something special, a real story that can help people. Just focus on that and everything else will be fine." Their comforting words helped Grace relax. One morning, Grace felt less scared when the sun started shining through the curtains. She was ready to face the day. The interview went by quickly, with bright lights and fast questions, but Grace became calm when she talked about her safety campaign for kids. She spoke with confidence and love for her work. After the show, Grace got lots of messages from friends and family, but the one that meant the most was from her brother, Leo. "You were amazing, sis. You're going to help so many kids," he wrote. In the following weeks, Grace's interview brought a lot of attention to her campaign. Her book series became very popular, and many people asked her to speak about her work. It was exciting, but also became hard to manage. Grace was always tired, sometimes even snapping at her family and the people working on the campaign. The happiness she once felt turned into stress and pressure. One hot August day during a photo shoot, Grace suddenly started crying and couldn't continue. Her parents took her home and canceled the rest of the day's plans. That evening, while they were sitting in their hotel room, Grace's dad said, "I think it's time we have a family talk." His voice was gentle but serious. Grace looked up, worried. "Am I in trouble?" she asked quietly. Her mom squeezed her hand. "No, sweetheart, we're just concerned about you." The family had a long talk about how the campaign was affecting them, especially Grace. They talked about the importance of the work, but also about taking care of themselves. Her dad said, "When we started this, we promised it wouldn't change who we are as a family, but I think we've forgotten that." Grace agreed, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. I love what we're doing," she said, "but sometimes I just want to be a normal kid again." Her mom smiled with tears in her eyes. "Of course you do, sweetie, and you should be able to." Together, they came up with ways to make things better. They decided to travel less during the school year, choosing only the most important events. They also planned to have more family days with no work allowed, just enjoying being together. As they made these plans, Grace felt relieved. She didn't realize how much the pressure had been weighing her down until it started to go away. For the first time in a long while, she felt excited about the campaign again. The next morning, Grace woke up feeling refreshed. She got ready to visit a children's hospital to read from her new book series. When she looked in the mirror, she noticed she looked a bit older and wiser, but her bright enthusiasm was back. At the hospital, Grace sat with young patients, reading stories and answering their questions. She felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was why she started this journey, to help kids and make a difference. Even though it had been hard, she knew now that she had the strength and support to keep going. As summer turned into fall and Grace returned to school, the changes they made worked. She had time to enjoy being with her friends, focus on her schoolwork, and just be a kid again. But she still put her heart into the campaign, knowing it was helping others. One day, Grace was walking home from school with her best friend Lizzie. Lizzie said, "You know, when you started this safety stuff, I thought you'd turn into a boring grown-up or something." Grace laughed. "Really? Why?" Lizzie shrugged. "I don't know. It just seemed so grown-up, but you're still the same, just cooler." Grace felt happy to hear that. "Thanks, Lizzie. I'm glad you still think I'm me." When they reached Grace's house, they saw Leo sitting on the steps, drawing. "What are you drawing, buddy?" Grace asked as she ruffled his hair. Leo proudly held up his picture. It showed two people, a tall one and a short one, standing in front of a group of happy kids. "It's us," he said. "You're teaching kids about safety, and I'm helping." Grace felt touched. "It's perfect, Leo," she said, giving him a hug. "Let's hang it up in my room. It'll remind me why I'm doing this, even when it's tough." As they went inside, Grace noticed a calendar on the wall. A date was circled. It was the anniversary of the day she saved Leo from being locked in the car. So much had happened since then, but Grace knew she was still the same girl who faced that scary situation with bravery. That night, as she got ready for bed, Grace looked at Leo's drawing on her wall. She thought about all the challenges she had faced and the ones that were still to come. But she also thought about the lives she had touched, the difference she had made, and the support from her family and friends. Smiling, Grace turned off the light and snuggled under her covers. Whatever the future held, she was ready. Not as a perfect hero, but as herself, a regular kid with a big passion for helping others. And that, she thought as she drifted off to sleep, was more than enough. If Grace's story touched your heart, let us know in the comments below. We hope her story reminds you that love, bravery, and the bond between siblings can bring about amazing change. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring and heartwarming stories.